Sunday the 24th. Hello, 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 hello. It was me. It was me. Saint, come here. This is my pack. It's Sunday, March 24th, 2024. And Tuesday is my mom's 1-year anniversary of elevating from this world. March 26th. So, I think we'll build a fire that night. Tuesday, we'll build a fire. Sit by the fire and think about her and maybe have a shot of whiskey. Maybe 2. So, we are reading Knowing God's Plan by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And the last stuff we read was incredible. Seventeen and 18. Unless he had just adhered to God's commandment. Right. Okay. Okay. So I left my mark on the wrong spot here, I think. Maybe I didn't. But after I start reading, I'll probably remember. So hopefully I'm making a good judgment call right now. So we are on page 315, part 6, chapter 6, part 1. And we read the other day about when God made Adam, he was God's most precious creation, which is us. Anyways, that's what we read. All right. Adam has so much more elevated than mankind today. He was susceptible to destruction through sinning and bringing death upon himself, as in fact happened. He had he adhered to God's commandment, he would have completely perfected himself. He would have become immortal and impervious to He descended to the lowly. He would have become immortal and impervious to the effects of evil. Yet when he sinned, not only did he fail to gain what he could have gained, but he even lost what he had already possessed. He was emptied. Not only did it stop his progress, not only did it stop his progress toward what he could have gained, but it actually took him backwards and emptied him of what he already had. He descended to the lowly and shameful level of contemporary man. That's us, okay? This is what the verse describes. Quotes, Adam did not maintain his glorious level. Until the following day, he has become like the animals. So this is where we left off last time we read, and then we're going to pick up from here. But I remember last time I did not understand this quote. Adam did not maintain his glorious level until the following day. So I don't know what it means by until the following day. Semicolon, he has become like the animals. So, anyways, moving on. We therefore find that man's existence can be divided into 3 levels. levels 1, 2, and 3. 1, his existence before the sin. That makes sense. 2, his existence after the sin. And 3, the existence he could have attained had he not sinned, which is the level he will reach in the world to come. Amen. The level of his existence before the sin was an intermediate level between what actually came after it and what could have been. The level of his existence before the sin, but after he was created, right? While he was in this state of holiness before he sinned, the level of his existence before the sin was an intermediate level. Okay, so it wasn't like he was completed at that. It was intermediate, which means he's got somewhere to go after that. Sin was an intermediate level between what actually came after it and what could have been. So it's like, here is this intermediate level, and it's like we can't make the assumption that that was a perfect level, because it's like he's not done yet, you know? Oh, what a trip. It's almost like the metaphor of, let's say, a plum. And as a plum is growing on the tree, we watch it go from really tiny to bigger, still green, to ripening, a beautiful purple. And it's like, oh, that's perfect. It's like, wait a second. Is it really perfect right there? Has it completed its cycle? Because the plum still needs to drop from the tree, and the meat of the plum grow rotten until the seed enters into the earth and then sprouts another tree. So it's like, is when the seed in the plum actually sprouts another tree, is that its perfect state? So as we're looking at this Adam, who is just like, wow, perfect, it's like, wait a second, are we sure we can say that? So this intermediate level, when he was like this ripe plum, in that intermediate level, it was actually he could have gone either gained up there or went down here. So he wasn't done yet. And what happened is, we thus see that man was not created in his perfected state. Exactly. That's not the perfected state. From the time of his creation, he already existed in an inferior form. So how ironic, what a paradox is that the way Adam is described here, great holiness. He was God's most precious creation. He possessed incredible knowledge and holiness and every imaginable kind of desirable quality. So that guy was not created in his perfected state. What? Are you kidding me? From the time of his creation, he already existed in an inferior form. So we're going to call that form right here inferior, since he was at a level lower than was fitting for him. Wow. So that perfected state may have looked perfect and beautiful, but he had potential to go up or down. And it's like, if there's potential, it's like, well, it's like identifying something in a perfect state when there's still more for it left to be done. It's just like, that's such a paradox. So from the time of his creation, he already existed in an inferior form, since he was at a level lower than was fitting for him. Furthermore, an even lower level potentially awaited him if he were to sin and bring guilt upon himself, as actually happened. And here's a footnote, number 19. We began this section by defining two general ways in which evil affects existence. Two ways evil affects existence: debasement and actual destruction. I feel like I need to look up debasement. Now we have related these concepts, debasement and destruction, to the specific periods of man's existence, focusing principally on the first of these two ways, destruction and debasement and destruction. Before Adam sinned, he was already on a level of debasement, since his true essence belonged to the higher level he could have reached. So his true essence was not realized in the state that they describe. It's realized when he when he gets to that place that he belongs, and that is the higher level that he could have reached. At this point, the lower level of destruction existed only as a possibility, not as an actual reality. After he sinned, he fell to the lower level and became subject to actual destruction. This lower level came about because man himself chose to sin and, quote, brought guilt upon himself. So it's fascinating that when Adam is in that state where he has not honored the one commandment, and thereby resulting in him elevating where he belongs, and he potentially could not honor that one commandment and then go down into these lower levels where it calls, right? Remember that? He descended to the lowly and shameful level of contemporary man. That's us. So he hadn't done either one yet. So the state he was in was amazing, but he had to go one direction or another. And what's interesting about this is I am aware that by us taking this route downward, by Adam not honoring the commandment, we are still going to get up to that place that Adam belongs. We belong, because we are Adam. So anyways, all the things we have described were set in place by the Creator. All these things we've described were set in place by the Creator. It's not an accident. It's not randomness of nature. He brought them into existence and created them in order that this world should have everything necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. Let's see here. So from the time of his creation, Adam's creation, he already existed in an inferior form, since he was at a level lower than was fitting for him. Furthermore, an even lower level potentially awaited him if he were to sin and bring guilt upon himself, as actually happened. All the things we have described were set in place by the Creator. He brought them into existence and created them in order that this world should have everything necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. He brought them into existence and created them. What does he mean? What does the writer mean here when he says them? He brought them into existence and created them in order that this world should have everything necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. Them. It's like we were talking about Adam, which is singular. I wonder if he's talking about the debasement and destruction. All the things we have described were set in place by the Creator. He brought them, debasement and destruction, into existence and created them, debasement and destruction, in order that this world should have everything necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. Footnote 20. Man's levels of debasement, yeah, I think so. Man's levels of debasement, destruction, and perfection were already prepared on the level of the divine emanations before actual existence came about. On this potential level of existence, God created man's eventual level of perfection, and then allowed evil to reduce and lower this level until eventually it became subject to actual destruction. Man's levels of debasement, destruction, and perfection. Man's levels. The levels of debasement, destruction, and perfection. The degrees of debasement, destruction, and perfection were already prepared on the level of the divine emanations before actual existence came about. So I understand that, because earlier in the book it talked about how when God created, he before God's idea of creation was actually put into play, it was created. So before this time and space of creation, it's not like he created time and space and then he created all of this, his plan, Adam and the sin and us falling and finding our way back. He didn't create all that stuff at the same time he did time and space. They're saying that he did that back in his area. And I think that's what it's saying here. They were already prepared on the level of the divine emanations before actual existence came about. On this potential level of existence, which means man's levels of debasement, destruction, and perfection that were already prepared on the level of the divine emanations before existence came about, that's a potential level of existence. It exists, but it hasn't put into play yet, but it has been created and it exists. God created man's eventual level of perfection and then allowed evil. Okay, so God created levels of debasement, destruction, and perfection before existence came about. Then he created man's eventual level of perfection. It's like, this is what it's going to look like when you're perfect. And then he allowed evil to reduce and lower this level until eventually it became subject to actual destruction. Only after these preparations did God create actual existence. Then God created actual existence. So he did all this stuff beforehand. That's why they're talking about potential. If all that stuff exists, this whole package that God created, but he hasn't really created existence yet, then it's like that stuff has potential. You know, it's like taking everything in your garage to a flea market. While it exists in your garage, the goal is to get it to the flea market and have it sit in your spot for sale. But while it sits in the garage, it exists and it's got potential. But existence is when you actually get it to the flea market. Only after these preparations did God create actual existence. See end of this section. God made all these preparations in order to create the conditions necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. You know, when it says stuff like this, he made all these preparations in order to create the conditions necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan, I think about the Big Bang. And I'm just like, you know, so did God create everything based on the Big Bang? And then billions of years later, you know, these pieces of the Big Bang are hitting each other, and some are meshing together, some are breaking apart. Billions of years, and it's like, okay, now the system that God created is ready for habitation after the dinosaurs and all that stuff. So God made all these preparations in order to create the conditions necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan. Instead of God just snapping his fingers, I guess he doesn't even have fingers, and saying, there it is. He did it this other way. And it's just like, no, I'm going to let it unfold. So these, in order to create the conditions necessary for the fulfillment of the divine plan, that man should be created initially imperfect with the task of perfecting himself so that he can ultimately merit the level of perfection and reward. Merit, deserve, earn. And it reminds me of the term bread of shame, to where if somebody's giving you everything you ask for, everything you want, everything you need, then eventually you're going to be like, hey, you know what? I feel bad. I'm not earning this. You know, what can I do to earn this a little bit? So this thing about perfecting ourselves so that we could ultimately earn the level of perfection and reward. It's a blessing that our Lord would do it this way. I remember, Adam, I think my parents got me a little mini bike when I was younger, and I didn't value it. In fact, everything I got, I didn't value. And I remember the first time I valued something is when I wanted a motorcycle, and this guy over here at the Old Cycle Shop had a motorcycle. It was a 250 Suzuki, an older one. And he's like, oh, I'll sell it to you for $900. I didn't have $900. My parents were like, we're not going to buy it for you. He let me work for it. So I worked for it for months. And I'll tell you what, I felt differently about that motorcycle because I worked for it. I valued it more. Okay. We're at 23 minutes. This has been beautiful. I love reading this and having these conversations with you guys, if anybody's even listening. And boy, life is really, really good. Love and light. Positive thoughts always. And there's some work in that. So